Okay, so for anyone listening that doesn't have a screen, a little bit of a pre-warning might not be that useful to you if you're just listening to this in your van or something, because we are going to be sharing our screens, etc., and just giving a breakdown of how some construction owners can set up a simple task management system for their business, essentially like a to-do list. A lot of guys are, writing things down, if they are, maybe on a notes app in their phone, something like that. Something that's a little bit more collaborative. You can have maybe a couple people on your team using it, and you can delegate a little bit. Obviously, it's not going to be super complex, but hopefully it shows you what's capable, what the software is capable of doing, and kind of give you an idea of how you can just start doing some stuff yourself and get organized yourself.
Yeah. This is possibly like the worst episode for you to push people not to listen to the audio. So anyone that is listening to this, I made the silly decision to let my son paint my face very quickly before we did this episode, and I can't get it off. But also, actually, like linking to this, I thought we got to jump on this to get this done because it was quite a sporadic podcast. But I think we're going to build this thing live, right? And we need to get this done now because you're jumping on another meeting, and I think it's almost like we can demonstrate that however busy you are, you've always got potentially 30-40 minutes between a meeting to like do something to improve your systems. And I think that's a good kind of way that we can demonstrate, because that's exactly what we're doing today. We're literally you're going to walk me through how I would go about this live, right?
Yeah, so the reason this came about is essentially we have a client, a potential client, who asked us to create a solution, and we realized that the solution that they wanted is initially they need to start first using a basic task manager system before we start introducing anything more complex. So we just thought we'd take this opportunity. We're just going to build it out for them, give it to them as a beginning, see if they actually like the platform, see if they use it, and if they want anything further done, they'll get back in touch with us. But
you mentioned software platform. Can you just give the listeners and the viewers a bit of a quick one on what platform this is being done on, and then I guess you're going to show me from opening our internet browser how we actually get started on that, right?
Yeah. So what I'm going to do is we're going to be using SmartSuite. SmartSuite is a platform that we've basically come to be using almost exclusively for our no-code builds. No-code builds means it's something that you don't need coding experience or knowledge to be able to customize, etc. We partly do it because it's easier to use, partly do it because it then allows the client or the owner to make some changes and things like that, kind of what we're going to show you now, without having to employ a developer to make those changes, even for the very small things. So it's very, very versatile, very user-friendly. There are other things out there that people use, such as Notion, ClickUp, as well as kind of older platforms. Monday.com is another one. We just find that this one is one that we gravitate towards because the user experience from the business owner's point of view and their workers and their operatives, subcontractors, they tend to stick with this one, whereas some of the others are a bit less friendly. We'll put it that way. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that one thing to add to that, which is what I quite like it, because I'm not really so much on the technical side, is from my experience of it, it's kind of seems to have the capabilities of, a one-man band company all the way to 40, 50, 100 employees, and I know SmartSuite is using it with companies with much larger organizations as well. So it really feels like if you're not on anything, you may as well get on something that has that capability to kind of grow as you grow as a business.
Definitely, it's a platform that will will allow you can scale with it without, some of these other platforms, you kind of outgrow them, and then you have to make this big decision of like, do I now take the time to take all my data off this platform to then go on? And usually what happens is people just stick with a platform until they've really outgrown it and they're forced to switch over. But this is very versatile, and it can grow with you, and you can plug on solution after solution that connects with all your different solutions. Maybe some guys just want to start with what we're going to show now and a timesheet solution, very basic. But then later on, they want to start adding in the project management side, the tracking the finances and all that sort of stuff. And instead of having that on a separate solution, you build it within here and then connect what needs to connect and keep separate what you want to keep separate. So I'm just going to quickly show what the home screen essentially of SmartSuite for anyone that first looks for SmartSuite. This is what you're going to be met with. Let's just.
And we'll probably drop a link in the show notes. If you are on a computer, so you can just click straight onto that page. But I assume this is something you really want to be doing on a laptop or something like that.
You need to be doing this on a laptop for sure. Setting it up, certainly they have an app which is available on your mobile, but definitely for setting it up, you want to do it on your laptop. So this is where you need to go. I'm now gonna go onto another screen, which I've already kind of got set up, but I have a bunch of client solutions on there. So I'm just going to show the initial stage of what it would look up when you click, create a new solution, add new solution. And what we're going to be doing is we're not going to be using a solution template. There are loads of templates in SmartSuite. Some of them are great. However, I would say after a while, you're going to want to probably start from scratch, especially if it's going to grow into something quite complex. But just to play around with the templates.
Clarify there, for those of us that are not, those are not so techie, what you're saying is you've got that sign-in page, you've essentially going to bypass that and go straight into what it would look like once you've signed up. We're not going to show that basic step of obviously putting in an email address and stuff like that, right?
We're not going to do the sign up because we're going to use our account for this because it's just easier for me to to go from there. And essentially, anyone that wants to get to this where I'm at, all you would have to do is click add new solution, start from scratch.
Can I ask, like, I'm assume what everything we're doing today wouldn't cost, like this is under the free plan, because I know SmartSuite has a free sort of initial thing, right?
Everything is you can have up to I think 3 solutions for free for the very, very small business, or essentially someone that doesn't have a task management platform that they're using, i.e. if you're just using a piece of paper or your phone, you can definitely get a way better solution for free using SmartSuite than what you're doing now. And then if you want to get more complex, then you're trying to add workers and things like that. It starts at about £7.50 per user per month. Um, so this is how it starts off with no no data, nothing put in. You always have this title field assigned to priorities, status, and due date. Um, we might end up deleting some of those because we might not need them, but we're gonna just leave it as that for now and kind of take it from there. So, from your point of view, JP, what do you think we need to add here? What would you as an owner like to see?
So I think categories always help when you have to-do lists, because there's usually, as in the construction industry, there's a kind of the running the business, and then there's running the projects. So
Okay.
I think, yeah, that the category of what part of the business it's in would be a valid thing. I think also, like, if you can assign something to a project, so
Yep.
maybe also the ability to link something to a project. Because I remember, when I was doing pen and paper, it would be, obviously the date, but then each project would have its own like mini to-do list, and then there'd be like the other section. And depending on, I guess, the type of construction business you've got, the ability to like categorize also in phases of project. So if a project is if a task is related to a set project, if you could further define whether that project's in pre-construction, construction, or post-construction, I feel like that would make sense in terms of how most people break things down
Okay.
with tasks.
A couple of questions. Departments. I'm assuming a task is only going to fall into one department. It's not going to be in more than one department. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so we want a single select for the department then. So we're going to go with department and just some, like, I guess you're going to have an accounts department, like some jobs work in accounts. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, so just one step previous to that, I think, because I remember when I got a bit confused when I was adding columns here, because what you're doing here is adding new fields to define a certain entry into the system. But when with
Yeah, I'm gonna.
SmartSuite, when you do it right, you
Yeah,
actually when you hit that plus, it's actually asking you first what type of field it is. Because I
yeah,
remember when I was doing that, I was writing like project code or project name, and
yeah.
it was like not finding it. So what you've done there, I think, is worth just explaining in the single select stuff, because I think,
Yeah.
including myself, it went over my head when I first started
So
using this.
every time you're going to add a new column, a new field, you need to decide beforehand, and it can be changed, by the way. So this isn't necessarily set in stone. You need to decide, is this going to be a single select? Is it a date? Is it a formula? Is it percentage we've got here? There are lots and lots of different types, and I'd definitely encourage anyone to go through all these types and become familiar with them, um, and then decide what you need. And that's why I asked. So we've got here multiple select and single select. A single select, you can only choose one. Multiple select, you can choose more than one. So, for example, if you were to go as a department, I think you're right. You probably just want a single select. But then, for example, in a different kind of solution, you might be allocating an expense to more than one section, more than one project, more than one area, and that's where you would use a multiple select. So then that gives you the option to,
Right.
choose more than one thing. So
So
we're
when
going to
you
go with,
hit that, right,
yeah.
then what does that next view show?
So now this is formatting the column. Like, what do you want on the column? The top bit is what you want that title of the column to be. We're going to call it department. And then
Yeah.
here we've got the different departments. the way you want it displayed is here. So we're going to go with this where it's all colored in. And we can add, what I like to do as well is just add a couple of things as almost like a placeholder, and then go back and fill in all the details. So we don't need to add all of the departments. Let's just add two, right? So we could add that.
I would say you'd have accounts, sales, and construction maybe, because obviously that's probably the three fundamentals.
Let's do that just for now, and like I said, we can go back. One thing before we move on, you can choose a default. So, for example, this will be useful if you have a sales CRM or something. Every time you add a new lead, the default would be, new lead or something like that, as opposed to you having to change it every time. We're not going to have a default for this. We're going to leave it. You can also have a help text. So, for example, if you've got a worker using it and they might not know what this column is about, you can explain here what it's about, and it will show up before they've selected. So let's just save that for now. Let's add this field. That's there. What I also like to do when building these out is actually just add a kind of fake task, right? And then you can kind of see it. So let's just have add invoices to folder, something that you do. Okay, we can already see this status thing. The default is backlog. Okay, this is a preset thing in SmartSuite, which I always end up changing. And then for the status of your tasks, you want to set, okay, what are the different stages of a task? Where could it be? What state could it be in? I don't have backlog. I usually have to do, as in, keep it simple. It's something that we need to do. I'll have that as blue. It's either in process, ready for review, or it's complete. I usually do add overdue. So this is for when something goes past its due date, it goes to overdue to say, it's there's some things building up. So that's those. We then talked about projects. Okay, you wanted to add the ability to separate things by projects. Is that correct?
Yeah. So some kind of label you could apply a project, and obviously if it's an admin or an accounts sales thing, it's not attached to a project. But then a further ability to also, group projects into different phases of there. So I'm not sure how that might work, because if you've got, as you've written there, add invoices to folder, let's just assume that's just a bookkeeping task that isn't attached to anything construction. Do you still add a column within this main view to categorize project, even though for this particular task, is that how you do it? You just have a master thing with all of the columns that you want?
Yeah, and actually, just to make that clear, let's change this to master task view, right? Because what we're going to do later is we'll hopefully be able to separate these by accounts tasks, sales tasks, projects tasks, and then only show the views that we want for those relevant tasks. Okay, so we are going to add what you said we're going to add another field. Now, the way people code their projects, if they have codes, if they don't, makes a difference here for the best type of field. I would say we're just going to go for a single select again for the projects. Okay, because a task generally is just related to one project, I think. Now, what we're going to do for this is we're going to make sure that users are allowed to create new choices. That means the next time a project starts, let's just, I don't know, you give me some names of the projects of, some of the
let's
guys.
say number, I don't know, 10 Oxford Street. We just make these up, right?
Okay, so let's just say we got 2 projects on the go. One's 10 Oxford Street,
And put
and
one on
one
Regent
is
Street.
43 Regent Street, right? Okay, I'm actually going to change this so it's very clear. Okay, we've got 2 different projects. Now, if a new project comes along and the task is related to the new project, you would just add it here. Okay, so and then you could also delete them as well when they're finished. Obviously, with what we do, this whole thing would be connected to like a database of projects which feeds in here. But you would then have to build that out as well. But we're just sticking with as if you first just want this task management thing, and keep it simple. So project, and then we also want
you could probably call it construction phase or project phase.
Okay. We can go with another
Again, single select.
Single select, and we would call that project phase.
And then we just put pre-construction, construction, and post-construction.
Okay.
Or pre-con, con, post-con.
Okay. We'll keep it simple. Okay. I'm going to change this color again. Make it orange. All right. So I've got pre-con, con, post-con. Now, we've got projects, we've got project phase. Let's just imagine that we want to have a whole view now of just project-related tasks. Okay. We're going to duplicate this view. This is the way I do it. You can also just create a new view, but I tend to duplicate the view, change the name. We're going to call it construction tasks. Okay. Now, in the construction tasks, we do want all of these fields. We want all of the fields in the construction tasks. However, like you said, you don't really want account stuff. Let's add a couple of, I don't know, 3 tasks. You give me 3 tasks that
construction related.
Yeah, only construction related.
So it could be send off valuation for September.
Okay, that's one. Another one.
Maybe we put off hire the digger.
Okay.
And then it could be, I don't know, check with client on light fitting choices.
Okay. Okay. So,
So the beauty of this, why I actually really like this kind of having segregation, is you don't feel like you have to have all the information in the title.
Yeah.
Because I recently actually had a conversation yesterday with a client who really was adamant to have everything in the title, because that's where he's come from, making lists on his phone. But actually, being able to say the name of the project and say the due date and all of that in separate ones, it just makes it a lot more concise.
And then you can actually start playing with it a little bit more, as in, if you just want to see what have I got to do today? Okay, filter that out. What do I do? What have I got this week coming up? So let's just add some. These are all in the construction department, okay? And then what we're going to do is, because these are construction tasks, we are going to remove any tasks that are not construction. And the way we do that, we would use the filters. So for this view, we're always going to have this filter, and that the department is only construction, right? And we only want the construction stuff. We're now going to add it to a project. We're just going to add them. I think we should just add them all to the same project for now, unless that doesn't make sense for those. I think that's fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
What phase would we say?
So they would all be in construction phase as well.
Okay. So what I then like to do for something like this is I would then group these. And I would group them by either the project. So you can see, okay, these are 10 Oxford Street projects. Or you could also group them by the phase of the construction phase, if that's how you want to work. And you can have multiple views. So for example, this could be construction task project view. If you just want to, I just want to go project by project and look at what I've got to do for the next week. Or if you want to look at, I don't know if this makes sense, just want to look at what pre-construction tasks I've got coming up that I need to get on with. Kind of depends on how you organize things.
So if, for example, if you just dropped one of those tasks into a different project, so let's just do the light fittings was actually for Regent Street, for example, that would then put that in a different group.
Yeah.
So essentially, I think just to make sure, I think I understand this and everything, but for the viewer really more, the idea of manipulating this stuff in the construction tasks, you're not got a separate database within there. It's all feeding into that master task view, but you're basically creating a as it says, a view or a particular arrangement of the tasks and hiding what's relevant, but it's all feeding in. So for example, if you were to add or change the data inside a view, it feeds into the main view, and also the other way around. So if you were to put some more information or change something in the master view, it then updates everything. It's not like you have to go through each view to change it, right?
I think I'm going to remove this assign to. You can use the assign to if, depending on if you've got lots of users. We're going to do something slightly different, and if we add a field now, and let's say we add another single select, okay, and we can just add the person that is going to do the task. Okay, so you can. This is where you could write team member. Okay, and you might have, I don't know, Bob, and Mark, and then we'll have Eric, right? So what you can now do, and this has gone to the end. So we're gonna or did I not? Oh, there we go. So, right. Now you can start allocating the jobs to different people. And then if you imagine we duplicate again, we have another view, which is just Mark's jobs, right? Right, Mark's jobs, and Mark only needs to look at his jobs. Yeah. And so now we're going to filter out where the team member is Mark. So Mark only really needs to worry about this, this view. So that's kind of another layer that we would add to it.
Yeah. And I think where this is quite good is where, because often for a company that's maybe looking at a solution this kind of fundamental, let's say, there's probably only a couple of people, but those people, you may have a husband doing the construction and the wife doing the admin. You can kind of create two separate views. So yes, you can both, when you're both sitting together, look at what everybody's got to do. But when you're going into your part of the business, you can go to your view, and that would just show the things that you're responsible for. I think also because usually, from my experience of companies that are only like one or two people running the show, it can be a bit of a mismatch of like, it's not necessarily you do all the admin, I do all the construction. Sometimes just for legacy reasons, that person does admin, but they also, do design. That usually happens with a husband and wife duo where, the wife is just generally more creative. So she just, for some reason, gets involved in like specs, even though she doesn't know construction kind of thing. So you can kind of manipulate that as well, right? And even though, for example, off hiring the digger is Mark's job because Eric's always done it, or Eric's got a relationship with the hire company, you can just overwrite that and just put it in Eric, right?
Exactly, yeah. So for example, perhaps this task, there's a certain stage that Mark has to do, and then once he's done, he can just then go, okay, Eric can take over, and it disappears from Mark's to-do list. He's not, he's no longer taking care of that. Now, the other great thing about this is the comment section, which, when you hand over a task to someone else, you then add, if you were to add a comment and say, I don't know, maybe you can help me out with a comment that would be relevant for check with client on.
You could say maybe, I don't know, client asked for brushed stainless steel, but not in stock till next month. Waiting for alternative choice. That's really realistic.
Not in stock till next month. Right. Let's just go with that. Okay. Now the comments there, if we were to allocate this to Eric, we don't have a view for Eric, but if we did have a view, we may as well duplicate this view and have Eric's tasks. Okay. Now Eric's tasks, obviously this is set for Mark, but Eric's task is going to pop up, and Eric will see that there's a comment there. Before he does what he needs to do, he'll read the comment and see, okay, that's out of stock. I need to make a decision based on that. So I think that's sort of the very, very basics of it. We can go further and further. What other things are useful?
So something that's catching my eye, which I really, I guess, fortunately less so now, it's relevant, but back in the day, running multiple jobs, multiple clients and multiple people all the time, is basically like never get everything done. And that kind of priority column is like shouting at me. I think it would be great if you could just explain how people can use that, especially ones that just feel like, you're basically always just doing what's urgent and what's the highest, and how you can, I guess, manipulate that view to make sure as an organization you're always getting the most important tasks done.
Okay, so let's go to the master view, right? And I think we should let's remove this. We didn't have this. We changed it. So this is one way you can just look at all the fields that are being displayed. The team member isn't being displayed in this one, but we do want it displayed in this one. Okay, so I'm going to move that there and it will pop up there. So let's allocate everything to someone. Okay, let's do that first of all. Then let's set some due dates, because then that will give us an idea of how we can use due dates, priority, things like that. Okay, let's say this is due tomorrow. This is due next week.
And you can actually I'm just looking at that, because you've got that start date thing on the left. That's if the task is, because if you wanted to use it for your jobs, like dig the foundations, you could actually put it for a 2-day job or something like that. That's what that kind of start date logic is, right?
Yeah. And then once you get into sort of automating certain aspects of it, you can have it automated based on the start date, based on the end date, and things like that. So we've got those due dates, and then let's just say we're using the preset priorities. You can change them to however you want to word them. Let's say add invoices to folder is normal. Send off valuation, is that a high priority or what would you say? High? Send off the valuation for September.
Yes, I mean, we can actually get into even, maybe not fully here, but another use case where I would really encourage someone, if they're really forward thinking in trying to push their business forward, is actually to have another column similar to that is called importance. Importance being how valuable the task is to the business. And and Arthur, I know you've read it, but to anyone I'd recommend Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, right? And he talks about this matrix of focusing on kind of the important tasks and not necessarily the urgent ones. So you could actually get pretty creative there, right? And you can categorize a task based on its urgency, but then on its importance, and making sure you guys are not just putting off the stuff that's important and not just fighting fires kind of thing.
Yeah, because, for example, if Bob is the owner and something is sort of urgent, but then when you go into that importance side and you're thinking, well, actually, this is urgent, but it's not that important. Well, then I'm allocating it to someone else. If I'm the owner and I've got a couple of other people that could do that job, then I'm immediately thinking, okay, how can I offload this to someone?
Yeah.
So,
but yeah, sorry, I took you off a bit of a tangent there. But yeah, I'd put the off-hire of the digger as normal, and the light fittings would probably be normal, right, until it gets to delay the project.
So we've got that going on now, and what I would then do is I would actually have another view. I would duplicate this view, and I would just do tasks by priority. Okay, and all that would do, all I generally would do is perhaps filter out any low tasks. Anything that's a low priority, you could filter it out, and then I would just sort them. I would just sort them by priority. So at the top of the list is always the highest priority. And then you could also perhaps sort them, but then filter out anything that is the due date is past next week, So let's just say due date is on or before. So we only want things that are on or before a week from now. Okay, and they're all there because they're all a week from now. But for example, if we would say, this isn't even due till 30th of October, which it will disappear. So that's another way that I would have these different views to help me prioritize in general.
And on those due dates you've got, are they automatically linked to the status? And the kind of, not status. Yeah, I mean, because there is a status of overdue, is there? Or what happens when, it's become past the date that it's due? Does something automatically trigger to show this is overdue? Or
so right now, it won't change this, but this will go red. But it's very easy to then set up the automation that anytime it goes over, basically it's any time today's date is past whatever date is on the due date, this would then change to overdue. And then when it does go overdue, the date goes red, and it tells you how many days it's overdue as well. Which is great for when you're when you're using this to look at how your workers are working and what they're doing to make sure they are on top of their work. I would highly recommend having some filtered views of, okay, who's got work that's overdue, who's falling behind a
Yeah, I
lot
mean,
on their work.
we've got that in our own business, right? You know, as owners of the business, we don't necessarily need to or want to know the granular tasks of everybody, but we've got pre-saved views of just across the board, across the whole organization, who's got tasks that are overdue, which is great, right? Because if you're seeing, you know, 10 of them out of 15 all being one person, starts to give you
Yeah,
that indication that either they're dropping the ball or they're you know, they're overstretched or something's going on there, right?
yeah,
I was going to ask you, because something that is quite common in construction particularly is views like this can sort of send people to sleep sometimes, you know, these kind of like
yeah,
list spreadsheets. And I've seen as you're clicking that, it gives you kind of the view option. And obviously I haven't got into the kind of building it, but I know that there are possibilities of other views. Like, how complicated is that? What does that involve in terms of creating something like that?
yeah. I mean, so for example, um, let's say these tasks, and we can filter them out. Um, what I'm going to do just to make this easier is we're just going to look at the construction tasks. Let's have a view, a calendar view of, we'll call it the construction calendar. Okay. And at first it's going to show everything, but again, if we just filter out the department, we only want to see construction tasks. And you know, for example, you might want to look at, say, pre-con. I want to just look at pre-construction tasks or something. And that's where you would go into project phases and choose those. But we're not going to do that because we don't have that many tasks
Yeah.
enough.
I mean,
And you can see,
I was going to
you
say
know,
it's not quite kind of obviously like chart scheduling, which I know is possible with this, but for somebody that's not doing anything like this right now, just a view like this, just to see, okay, what trade is on what site, you know, especially if you're only running like two or three, you know, big
yeah,
jobs at once, so you don't need to know 100 different places and trades. It's just good to see that view in a different way of, um, you know, displaying the
yeah,
information, because sometimes that can show you information that, you know, you might lose when it's in a kind of list view, right?
yeah, and you know, there's nothing stopping you from adding times if there's a certain phone call that needs to be made. If this phone call, for example, where you're checking the light, it has a particular time that it needs to be made, you could add the time here of what time you know you need to make that call.
Mm.
Let's just say it's 3:45, and if you do have somebody looking at your calendar, it will show up on here on the day as, I don't know what day I set that exactly, but it will show on.
Yeah. I can see a real use case of this. You know, another common dynamic we see is where you know the wife usually is kind of doing the sales, booking in the
Yeah,
calls, booking in the meetings, but because of the technical aspect of it, the other half is kind of, you know, going out there looking at the job, pricing it, scoping the client, and all of that. So you
yeah,
could actually like turn this into the function of, you know, that he, let's say in most cases, can look at his calendar to see what day the site visit is to look at the new job, and
exactly.
she's able to just put it in without it kind of needing to pass a post-it note or
Yeah,
whatever it is. How about like, and again, this may not kind of go into the remit of this particular tutorial, but let's say like that valuations for September. In actual fact, you should be, you know, say you're doing valuations fortnightly, every Thursday or something. Do you have to keep creating a task, or can you like
no,
simplify that? How does that work?
yeah. So we would go into the due date, and we'd recur. We'd have a recurring task for fortnightly. You would want to go custom, and that's every 2 weeks. And if it was Thursday, you'd do that, and you'd also set, you know, what you want that to, when it recurs, what the status would be, and it's to do. You can. Also, choose whether you copy all the fields each time that task recurs. So, for example, what we haven't got actually is this description. I'm going to add it in. Okay. Actually, we don't need to add it in. I'll just open it up and show you. So when you actually open up the task, there's a lot more information that you can add in that doesn't have to be in each field, sort of in the columns. And so by having the fields roll over essentially each week, you can leave notes here that then continue. You don't lose the notes, which can be very useful for people as well.
So once, let's say, that task is due on the 24th, but for whatever reason I get delayed and I only do it on the 28th, I mark that task as complete, and then it then triggers 2 weeks from the day I marked it complete, or 2 weeks from the original date it was supposed to be done.
If you set something as this is to occur weekly on Monday, but you don't get round to doing it until Friday, the next recurring task will be the original Monday.
Yeah.
We
actually, I just realised we glossed over this concept of like when you do something on here, how do you actually mark you've done it, and how does that look and stuff? Because we're taking that for granted that's just natural to us, but I think it's actually worth just explaining.
Yeah,
that.
Definitely. So what I would do, I would recommend everyone to have is with this master view, I would actually split this up. I would have two. I would have master task view. We could say we would have open tasks. Okay, so these are all the tasks that are not completed. And then I would have completed tasks. We'll just rename this completed. Okay. And all of these views that you have, I would add a filter to every single one of them, except for this one, which is that the status is not complete. Okay. So that just means that when something gets marked as complete, it disappears, because otherwise you're going to have a whole bunch of completed tasks clogging up, the platform, and it's not going to be very clear. And then you can always go back if you want to audit what people have done. I would actually have this as complete. So I would just have the complete tasks here. So you can always see, okay, what's been done, and you can further filter through and see, okay, what got done this week, things like that. So I would do that for all of these views.
That's pretty powerful, right? Because then you've got and the unlike with your notebook or notes or something, often what happens on the job, let's say you off-hire the digger, you mark it as complete, but then you get the bill and you see you've been billed for another week, you've still got the record of that, and it's quite easy to find that, to then see, okay, hold on, I marked that as complete on the 23rd. I can see the record that I marked it as complete. Why is that? It's a lot easier.
Especially if, you get to the point where you're training your guys, if it's your guys or your girls or you yourself, training yourself to add the relevant information here, and another aspect of this is, you can add files and images. You could have a files and images thing where you upload the paid, if this was paid,
the email or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Then that's
let's say that scenario did happen. You marked it as complete, and you'd been using this for 6 months, so you had thousands of tasks that were complete. It was something to do with the digger. Like how do you find that? Like, I know you've talked about this power search function.
Yeah, you
But
don't use it
what
that
does that
much,
look
do
like?
you? But
I actually have,
let
and funnily enough, after you told me, that's all I use. So I think
all
it's a good
right.
feature to actually explain
It's
to
great,
people.
yeah. So let's go with I'm going to name this, okay? Master tasks hub. Okay, I'm just okay. Just so we have a reference for this. This is the power search function. There's a find function here for within this view, which is still good. But let's say, as you said, you're in a situation where there's a lot of accumulated tasks that are completed in process of being done, etc. Um, I would use the power search. Now, the power search also, you can use the power search for your whole solution, all the solutions that you have in SmartSuite. So, for example, if you've got your invoicing solution, you've got some payment solutions, you've got some task solutions. Now you can maybe start to think, oh, if I search Digger payment, it's going to come up with all of those things, and you can right then and there go, well, I've already put it in that solution. It's definitely there, and you can verify essentially. So yeah, I mean, this is the power search. Off hire the digger, it turns up there, and even if somebody's commented,
Mm.
we have that a lot, don't we? Where I use it like this. I know JP sent me a comment, and he said something
And
in
he
that
said,
comment.
fuck, something.
yeah, yeah. He was like, why the fuck? And then I thought, right, that's what I need to search, and then I
Yeah.
can search the comments, and then
Yeah.
it'll come up with that.
What can you just clarify? Because I think for us and for me, as with Dynamic Assist, it's very clear solution. We have different clients, different construction businesses we work with, so it makes sense to segregate things. But for a construction company, why would they have like separate solutions? Why wouldn't you just put it all in one? It seems a bit kind of counterproductive to have like different things to click into for different.
Okay,
Do you know what I mean?
so for example, as a company grows, and we talked about some of these solutions, payment solutions. We've got a whole knowledge panel with all the SOPs. We've also got HR solutions. The main reason I think, one thing, it's clunky. Okay, one thing, it's clunky. Imagine if you've got all these different tabs of all these different things, and I mean, Mark just wants to know about this. Mark just wants to go in there and do his thing. The other thing is the permissions, because you don't want certain people having access to all the information from a data handling standpoint. You don't want that. You don't want, for example, we've got people who deal with our accounts, for example. We don't want somebody that's, marketing looking at the account side of
How
things.
much
There's no
people are getting
reason for them.
paid, and yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You don't. And yeah, certainly. For example, with the timesheet solutions that we've built, we make sure that you can't have people seeing other people's day rates.
hmm
You know,
So just to be clear, what you're suggesting in this tutorial is start with one solution, but actually as the business grows, to get into the habit of like segregating things.
definitely, you definitely want to begin with this, and I'd encourage everyone to just start with this, because if you start thinking about, oh, it would be in this ideal world, I have all these different solutions and they talk to each other and things, it's pretty daunting, and from experience, to do that by yourself. And it may seem easy, and you've got it in your head, and you're thinking, oh yeah, if that just connected with that would be so great.
Yeah.
But if you're not even using something like this, I would say start with this, and then when it becomes an issue, or when you outgrow it, or when you start to worry about that, then start thinking about, okay, I do need to, um, architect this out a bit more and separate and segregate things.
Another area that I think, I can see this fundamental, like setting this up of using statuses and comments, and where I've seen it grow for contractors that want to use this more is this idea of like an RFI schedule. And I think this goes past the context of what we're doing here, but just to kind of show what, or talk about, in my experience, what this could develop into, is because in construction you've got tasks that need to be done, but then often within those tasks, especially if it's to do with projects and blockers on projects, you've got multiple people that need to do a back and forth to like confirm and respond, approve something. So you can almost get to the point where you've got the status of the task, whether it's done, closed, but then additional column for like status of like comments and approval status. And we've done
Yeah.
that, right, for clients where you've got that view segregated, where you can then start engaging your architect and your client and stuff like that, where they can then see, okay, what, in me as the client, what am I blocking on this project? And I'm not
Yeah.
necessarily completing or stopping the marking the project as complete, but then I'm just like able to just see specifically what's waiting for me to clear.
What I would say, just as a kind of, you know, just to give people something that they can do, is a quick fix. It's not a long-term solution, and as your business grows, I would actually use this, which is, say, ready for review. We can change this for what would you say, for review comment?
Yeah. And then I mean, I remember when I kind of went into this mode of business. So as I started stepping away from my construction business in terms of the day-to-day operation, what I implemented was this concept of like the person on the ground could mark the task as complete, but then at the next level of management had to actually sign the job off, and it went through that. So what we could essentially create in this example is this label of like essentially ready for approval,
Yeah.
and then approved and
So
complete. And that way it kind of goes through a sort of an additional check, because we've all been there when, well, not all, but if you've had, for example, an apprentice where they mark something as done because they've
yeah.
read exactly on the tin what it says and they've just followed the book, but in reality the task is not done.
Yeah.
So that's a sort of more like basic level of what I'm talking about with this kind of RFI approval type
So
setup.
I would do something like this. Okay. So these are the options we've got. We've got to do. We've got in process if it's something that takes some time. For review, comment, ready for approval, complete sign off. So for example, let's just say in that previous thing, if Eric is sending this with this comment back to Mark, he would just change this to, I need a review. I need you to review this, to comment on this. Okay. And then that would go back to Mark. And then Mark would have you could then filter out and have a separate section of what are tasks that don't require me to do something, but just require me to go through and read through and comment, respond. And that's kind of it's not the ideal solution, because obviously that's why we build much more complex things that take into account all the nuances of this. But it definitely gets you out of a bind, and it's something that could be immediately implemented and used.
And sometimes I think it, even from our own experience, how much easier it is to work with a contractor that's already like gelled their team into this concept of like making due dates, creating tasks, assigning people, not just like making a task but not making a single person exclusively responsible for it, all of that, how much easier it is then to roll out more kind of complex custom things because you've already got
Yeah.
that buy-in. So this is, I think, it's almost like a really fundamental step, I think, for any business that just wants to take it to the kind of next level of like organization and scale in their construction firm.
Yeah, I think the whole mentally training yourself even, and it's something that I've had to, get used to as well. No task should really there shouldn't ever be a task without a due date. I mean, what is a task without a due date? Um, Even if it's just a kind of vague one in the future, if it's a low priority task, just put a due date on it. And when that due date comes up, you're then forced to consider that task. Do I even have to do this task? Is this even important? And I've had that where I say to myself, I've put this off now for a couple of months,
Yeah.
and then I just delete the task and go,
Yeah.
it's probably useless.
But it's also worth adding, actually, I think, and maybe again we're getting out of the context of this, but even for the example of the potential client you were talking about that you're fundamentally building this for, she was talking about using something rather than like WhatsApping yourself with the list of stuff of what you need to get on Travis Perkins, like actually having a list somewhere. So you can also create lists and things that don't necessarily have due dates on them, right? And you can kind of incorporate all that as you grow into like what this solution could be used for.
Yeah. I mean, definitely. And the more you get used to it, the more you use it, the more some people. If this is essentially a shopping list, some people are going to write it here. Some people are going to have a little because you could have a.
Checklist
I
or
know
something, can't
we
you?
don't necessarily like this. We find that we used to use it, but maybe not so much now. Is having the checklist option, okay, and we'll just call it checklist. All right. So here you can have a whole checklist of items that are related to that
Mm-hmm.
project, and you can actually assign individual parts of that task to different people with due dates. So that's also something that you might want to play
Yeah.
around with as well.
The last thing that I did want to ask you, and again, I don't know how complex or simple or time consuming this is, and obviously this concept is trying to build this between a meeting, so that I don't want to get this to make this video too long. But something that comes up time and time again is like, yes, this is great, something like this for somebody that sits behind a desk all day, but most of the key people in a construction business are, sitting in a van or, on site, you know. I know we've previously done this idea of creating like simplified forms for people to add tasks, because obviously you've got the app to manage your tasks on the phone, and actually it looks quite good, and the SmartSuite app is quite good to do this stuff. But can you, if you can't build it now, but can you at least kind of explain what that sort of simplified form entry view is to create
I
tasks?
think I think actually we could just build a form, super simple. Let's just call it the new task form. But imagine for anyone sort of thinking more broadly about this, what we use this mostly for is for timesheets, people logging in their time, because these forms, you can share them and you'll see. So these forms are shareable. So you can just put the link somewhere else. You can embed it on your website. So, you can imagine that you could have your workers just go on your website, fill in their name, fill in their days, how many days they work, etc., and it automatically gets added onto whichever master task board you choose to link it to. So when you're creating a new form, just have a form title for the person that.
Yeah, so let's say we're essentially creating this as like a snag form, right? So when the site manager is walking around the job, and if he sees any snags, or any other trade sees any snags that need to be fixed, they're given this link to just enter it. So basically and you want to keep it simple, right? You just want the name of the snag and what project it's on. And then obviously the PM can go in and put more details, or maybe a photo or whatever. You can add a photo or something if that's possible.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of, I probably did that too quickly, but that's the title of the snag. That would then show as the title of the task, the project. I would probably also, if I were to do this as a snags thing, you probably do want a tag or something as a snag, but you would want that to be auto-filled, not for the worker to do that, but when it turns up on your back end, that all of that stuff's automatically filled in. And then, for example, we already added that files and images. Then they can just add a file and an image there. You can put your own logo there. Let's just call it that, right? And the preview of the snag form would just be this. And let's play around. Let's put give me a snag to add in.
Yeah, just say skirting in bathroom is not water resistant.
Okay, right, and let's just say it's Regent Street project. We don't have a picture, but you just upload the picture, and that's it. And then actually, we didn't have construction in all those departments, so it won't turn up there. But it'll be in the master task there, skirting.
Yeah. But I think the concept really here is, the person behind the desk. And even if that is you and you putting it in there and then going back to the desk on the Friday or the Sunday to tidy it up, it's like it's going somewhere rather than it just going on the notebook or it going just in your head and then getting lost.
I mean, this is one that I highly recommend everyone to have, is a client complaints form, just because someone picking up the phone can then fill in that form and that adds it to their solution. Obviously that wouldn't necessarily be connected with this solution. Doesn't really make sense for it to be, part of the task solution, but that's another option of kind of what you could build there.
I think we could talk. I don't think either of us would want to, but there's enough features in here to talk for a lot longer. I definitely feel like, we've covered some real fundamentals here to be able to get any construction firm off the ground with getting into this process. Was there anything else that you wanted to kind of add before we kind of close this session?
No, only I think you're right. We're getting to a point with this build where if you're thinking beyond this, you do want to start thinking about, okay, maybe I need to add another tab here for a whole nother section of things. Maybe, you're going to have your admin tasks here and then your construction tasks here, and you start splitting them up like that. There's a lot of things that you can do, and definitely, once again, I encourage you to just go for it. However, once things start getting a bit more complex, definitely take a step back and make sure that you're not going down a path where it's going to be more complicated to unpick it all later.
Yeah, it's a fine balance, isn't it, between not tweaking it too much, but then also letting it become like an uncontrollable beast. And to echo what you said, I think, and bring it down to like a practical level, I'd say, if you're going to introduce something like this, set aside some time every couple of weeks just to look at how you're using a system like this, and then keep tweaking it and keep tweaking it, because that'll give you a bit of a pulse of how efficient it is. And I think when you get to that point where you're tweaking it but it's not really making things easier, that's when you probably want to look at doing something a bit more customized to suit exactly your business's workflow, or as you've already teased, is the idea of automating things so that it just
Yeah, that's the
eliminates the
next
need for
stage,
even
and we
people.
could probably do it. We'll do a whole nother episode on, we'll maybe start back with this, and then we'll continue with some further. So thanks for anyone that's kind of got this far. If you got this far, well
Yeah.
done. But
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll drop. I don't know if you want to drop personal email address, but we'll drop a teams at dynamicsys.co if anyone does want to get a bit of help if they're stuck with a certain feature. I'm sure we'll be happy to
yeah,
help you out. Okay, cheers, guys.